Today I'm going to go over two of the biggest causes of a posterior pelvic tilt. What's going on, everybody? How you doing? It's Blake Bowman here with GuerrillaZen Fitness, and in today's video what I want to be showing you are two of the biggest causes of a posterior pelvic tilt, which is a postural problem regarding the pelvis. To begin with, if you don't know what a posterior pelvic tilt is, then I'll explain it to you really quick. Posterior means behind, right? So when your pelvis is posteriorly tilted, that means that it's tilted back like this. If this is the front of your pelvis and this is the back of your pelvis, if you have a posterior pelvic tilt, it's up like this. More specifically, if you want to get really technical here, there's a bone on the front of your pelvis called the ASIS, and there's a bone in the back of your pelvis called the PSIS. If the ASIS comes up higher, like this, in relation to the PSIS, then you have a posterior pelvic tilt. Typically what you'll experience when you have this too, if you're somebody that has a posterior pelvic tilt, is your lower back curvature, that curve, that inward curve that's supposed to be in your lumbar spine, your lower back, it's going to be gone, and your lower back's going to be just flat, which is not good. So this is a big problem. It predisposes the discs in the lumbar spine to injury, and it can predispose you to a lot of other different injuries too. It's a misalignment of the spine and the pelvis, and it's definitely something you want to fix. The first way you can go about fixing anything is identify what's causing it first, right? I could show you exercises for this all day, but if you're not addressing it at that cause level, then you're really not going to see a lot of benefit from the exercises that I give you. It's only if you address those causative factors in conjunction with doing the exercises that you'll get the most benefit. So this is something I might talk about a lot here on my YouTube channel in the future. Today, I just want to get two of the biggest causes out of the way right off the bat here. Actually, I just realized I kept saying two of the biggest causes. I'm going to actually be going over three of the biggest causes. All right, so the first one is standing. Okay, people stand wrong usually that have a posterior pelvic tilt, and they'll literally be standing in a posterior pelvic tilt. So people like waitresses, waiters, bartenders, moms that have babies, all of them tend to stand kind of weird. This is something I've noticed a lot with my private coaching clients online. And it's also something I just see in the general population. Basically, if you're standing in a posterior pelvic tilt, you're reinforcing that position all day long, and that's why it's not going away for you, right? And that might be one of the reasons why you have it in the first place. So typically when you're standing in a posterior pelvic tilt, you're going to have this kind of sway back thing going on where it will be tilted, that front part will be higher than the back part, but your pelvis will also kind of be swayed forward like this too, okay? So if you're standing at a desk or something, or a bar, it might be easy to do that. Some people kind of rest like this. Some people with like trays, or they're holding a baby, they'll kind of shoot their hips out like this to kind of balance the baby more. These are all very, very bad. And one way that I want to teach you a really quick method to know if you're standing like that and how to fix it is to do what I call the toe test, okay? So I'm going to back up here, see if you can see me. I'll be a little bit blurry, but you should be able to see it. Basically, if you're standing in this posterior tilt position with the hips forward, you're not going to be able to lift your toes off the ground like this without pushing your hips back like that, okay? So this is a test that you can use to realize if you're standing like that, right? If you're standing like this and you can't lift your toes up, then you know that you're standing in a posterior pelvic tilt with a forward sway of the pelvis. So right when you lift your toes up, wherever your hips shift back to, that's where you want to be standing most of the time, so that you can just lift the toes off the ground like this, okay? So long story short, I don't know if you can see that back there, guys. I apologize if I was blurry because I think I went out of focus there. But if you cannot lift your toes off the ground, then you're probably standing in this posterior pelvic tilt, forward shifted, position, okay? And if you notice that that's happening, wherever your pelvis needs to go naturally when you lift your toes up, that's where it should be all the time. So if you're somebody that stands at work, make sure that you're standing with your hips positioned where they would otherwise be if your toes were lifted off the ground. All right, so that's one of the biggest causes right there. Another huge cause is improper sitting position, okay? And I'll show you what that looks like right now. All right, so out of all three of these causes, this is probably the biggest one, the biggest contributor, okay? And the way that sitting can cause a posterior pelvic tilt is actually sitting just in the wrong way, okay? And what that would look like is this. I know this is kind of hard to see. People always comment that my black pants blend in with this. I apologize for that. But basically, if you sit with your pelvis pushed forwards like this, okay, what's happening is your pelvis is actually tilting back. Can you see that? Your pelvis is tilting back, and your lower back, your lumbar spine, is actually flexing, which means that the curve in it, instead of being curved like this, okay, can you see that? It's curving like this, okay? So that inwards curve is reducing, and your lower back is being pushed into the chair. You're literally posteriorly tilting your pelvis when you sit like this, okay? So you cannot have your pelvis out in front of you when you're sitting. If you sit like this for like 8 hours a day, your tissues are going to be adapting, and this is why you have a posterior pelvic tilt. So the ideal way to sit is to put your butt all the way back into this backrest, okay? And sit essentially with your pelvis directly underneath your rib cage like this, okay? My pelvis is in a neutral position right now. As soon as you scoot your butt out in front of you like this, and then you relax down, this is the worst position you can be in. If you have, you know, an existing disc injury already, like a herniated disc or something like that, you're just going to be making it worse by sitting in this position. So make sure you're not sitting like that. Push the butt into the back, okay, and then sit upright so that your rib cage is stacked directly vertically over the pelvis. Okay, so the last big cause of sway back posture with the posterior pelvic tilt, and I'm using these terms interchangeably. I don't know if you noticed that. Typically, somebody that has a posterior pelvic tilt, okay, with the pelvis rotated backwards, their hips are also going to be shifted forward. It's very, very common. It doesn't always, you know, you don't always see that, but you know, like the majority of the time, if you have a posterior pelvic tilt, you also have a forward shift of the pelvis. But the last biggest cause of this is sleeping on the stomach, okay? And the reason why this happens is when you're sleeping on your stomach, most likely you're propping up your upper body, whether that's your head or your face with your arms and like a pillow. Most people will hug a pillow or something, or at least have a pillow on their side of their face when they're sleeping on their stomach. And what you're doing with your body when you're in this position is the pillow is pushing your upper body backwards, and your hips are sinking into the bed, okay? So you're kind of putting yourself into that posterior, anterior, which means frontal, shift of the pelvis. The hips are sinking into the bed, and it makes it easier for the pelvis to kind of tuck underneath there like that. So, don't sleep on your stomach. That's the worst position to be sleeping in. Ideally, for postural purposes, you should be sleeping on your back. Sleeping on the side is okay. It's definitely not ideal, but sleeping on the stomach is certainly the worst position to be sleeping in, and you shouldn't be doing that really under any circumstances. Boom, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave me a like down below. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you want to see in the future. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel over here. Also, if you want a little workout that I put together that actually addresses the muscle imbalances that cause an anterior or posterior pelvic tilt, then get this workout right over here. Just click that. It'll take you to a web page. I'll ask you for your email. As soon as you enter that in, I'll send you the workout. That's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.